So I'm here as part of our ongoing Office of Community Engagement and Partnerships conversation series, and I'm joined by Andrea Assaf, who is the director of the This Bridge project that we're going to be talking about, and Heather Raffo, who is a visiting artist from New York City, and we're so excited that you are here. So I really wanted to hear more about your project as well. But I'm going to start with Andrea to find out a bit more about this amazing project that you have going on for 2 full years. And there's this great research component as well that I wanted to learn more about.
Yes. So I'm the artistic director of Art to Action, which is a small nonprofit organization based both here in Tampa, Florida and in New York City. And we've been engaged in this partnership with the University of South Florida for 4 semesters already, which is part of a national program funding initiative called Building Bridges. And our iteration of that project is This Bridge, Arab, Muslim, and Middle Eastern Artists series, in which we focus mostly on women artists or projects in which the lead artist is a woman.
Well, Heather is the playwright and also is an actress as well. And what I loved about your talk the other day was about how this is such a personal piece for you that you basically kind of were drawn to write it because of your own personal experience of being a bridge yourself. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the play that they're doing on campus is called 9 Parts of Desire, and it's the first play I wrote, and it's about 9 Iraqi women that span pretty much the 90s through till present time. And when I performed it in New York, it was a solo show, and here they're doing it with a cast of 17, so that's really exciting. My dad is from Iraq, and my mom's American, so I naturally grew up bridging both cultures. And I think this piece is an absolute dialogue and testament to that. It's a lot about war, but it's a lot about the resilience of the women, their desires, their drive for life, and it's really exciting to see, 11 young women, 20-year-old women actresses from Tampa, from USF, get inside these characters. The bridge of the theater arts automatically, as an actor, I mean, their job is to not only empathize, but to absolutely become this character. Like every little step is broadening their horizons to who these Iraqi women are and could be, and who they might meet in their future, right? So it's deeply exciting, and I think that under Andrea's direction, it's even better. I mean, they have somebody fully immersed in the Arab American community and Arab American arts, shepherding them through this process. So it's really thrilling. There's also a Palestinian woman in the cast and a Nigerian Muslim. So the cast itself is bridging different cultures. There are African Americans in the cast, white Americans in the cast. So there's a real, Latin American. Yeah. So I mean, it's a diverse cast. There are men in the cast.
Wow.
It's the cast itself has become a bridge dialogue.
So would you say USF is breaking new ground by doing the show in this way?
Yes, absolutely. It's never been done with 17 people before. Ever.
And bringing so many different cultures together, I think is going to be really exciting for this campus. You also talked about kind of this drive that you had to be able to share these stories, particularly because at a certain point the stories were no longer being told, and the reaction you heard from audiences as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I started writing, there wasn't another play in the English language with an Iraqi female protagonist, and that's really saying something. It's really, I mean, obviously it's just 1998, but we had the first Gulf War, so it wasn't like Iraq wasn't on the minds of Americans. But to kind of arrive into the theater and say, as an actor, I was looking for these plays that represented this aspect of what would either be diaspora or an event that happened. It just didn't exist. So writing it was, I don't want to say a labor of love. It was an absolute search for identity in myself. And the reaction has been really positive, because the hunger that I have found in Americans to know more about Iraqis' real life events in Iraq, something from another perspective, is huge.
I think what you're doing is so important, particularly the fact that you've added a research component. You have psychology students actually studying the reactions to the various productions. Can you talk a bit about where you are in that process and what you've been learning so far?
Sure. So a component of the Building Bridges initiative nationally, of which we are in the first cohort, one of only 6 campuses or arts organizations in the country to be awarded the opportunity to do this. So it's been like very exciting, and a component of it that the foundations were interested in from the beginning was research, and a little bit beyond arts evaluation as we usually do it, but really an investigation of not only does arts and exposure to the arts change attitudes and beliefs and behaviors, but if so, how does that actually happen? Those of us who are artists and do this kind of work, passionately, unquestionably believe that that is true, and yet there's not much data out there, like anywhere.
Wow.
Not in the arts field, certainly not in the psychology field or in the sciences. So we put out a call for a research fellow that would be supported by the grant, and I interviewed students in different departments around campus, and the one that emerged as the most qualified and the most excited was Renee Brown Hangartner, who is a PhD student candidate in the Department of Psychology, which was fantastic because then it became a truly interdisciplinary collaboration, and her department supported her to not only be the research fellow, but to create a lab in the research department for undergraduates to learn about conducting a study and work with Renee. So she has organized, 10 at a time, per semester, undergraduate students working with her. So that just kind of exponentially increased the scope and impact of the program in a certain way, because now there's this whole art and science dialogue happening. What we have seen from the climate survey is that in the time period of to spring 14 to now, the general climate of Islamophobia on campus may be rising. But the people who attend these events seem to decrease their assumptions and stereotypes. The students who actively participate in a project with the guest artists more dramatically both decrease their Islamophobia or stereotyping, but they also increase their interest in and desire to learn more about the Middle East and about Arab culture. So these are, findings that are in the early stages. They're not statistically relevant yet in a scientific sense because we just need more people to participate and to measure. But they're trends that show us that the impact that we believe the arts has is actually measurable, which is extremely exciting for the arts field.
Yes.
And I think it's breaking new ground for the psychology field too, because it's simply not an area that is typically studied.
I think this is so exciting because I just love using theater as a way to create dialogue. So I often have done panels after theatrical productions, and I feel it's making a difference. But to be able to show that there's evidence that it is making a difference, like Heather had mentioned that people were coming up to you and thanking you after the production for what you had done for the Iraqi culture. And maybe you could talk a bit more about how it feels to then now have this research component added to what you've been doing.
Yeah, it's really needed to solidify for both the theater community and everyone outside it a measurable term that supports the arts itself, right? And I think that what Andrea and I both know, and what has allowed us to continue to do this, is that not only is it measurable and worthwhile, we actually think it's the best way to affect change. So,
Yes.
I mean, if you're just taking me for an example, like if I thought, gosh, times are tough, I'm an Iraqi American, I want to help educate Americans on who and what Iraqi culture really is before a war or just after. What could I be doing? Should I be going to Washington, D.C.? Should I be an activist? Should I be like what is the way forward? Like, of all the things I could be doing, the arts was the most important thing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like it very shortly rose to the top that this is the best way to reach the most people in a really deep way. The ambassador from Iraq to America had said that I could do in an hour what it had taken him a lifetime to do. And I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but what's true is that an hour of good theater that really is expanding one's mind and heart, we all can understand that that's better than a lecture.
Yes.
Right? That's better than reading up on something. It's a really immediate way to connect with the issues and with the people.
A few other things I was wondering about when you talked about going through the State Department. I found that to be quite fascinating. What has been your role with the State Department, and how do they help foster the arts in this way?
Yeah, the State Department has many ways that they foster the arts. For me in particular, they had helped support trips where 9 Parts was being done in different countries, and they wanted to support my going to the country to create a dialogue after and around the show. So I went to Malta and I went to Iraq. And my job there was not as a performer, so I didn't perform my own piece. There was a Maltese production and an Iraqi production. So I would watch the piece and just really do community engagement after. So my job was to be a cultural diplomat. My job was to be the bridge, be the person in between, discussing both whatever I felt the show was, but also whatever the show brought up for them. So in Malta, there was a very different response than in Iraq. In Iraq, they had to cut a lot of the play because you couldn't really stage it. So a lot of the discussion was around what was cut, why we couldn't talk about it on stage, but how we could talk about it in private spheres. And also, I was educating these young Iraqi women, 20s, they were college students, on history that had been erased from their knowledge. So they said, we didn't know this. This wasn't in textbooks. I'm like, oh, this is your grandmother's knowledge that was told to me, but hadn't gotten to you. Stuff that you might not have talked about in your family. And in Malta, it was really the hot topic that came shortly after seeing the show was that race was a big issue on that island. Because the Maltese population identifies as white and European. There's so many street names, people's names in Arabic. So much of the Maltese language is in Arabic, and yet nobody will do a production. Theater is not done in Maltese, in the language of Maltese. So doing 9 Parts, mostly in English, but with a few characters in Maltese, kind of ignited the audience to realize just how against and then absurd it was that there would be these characters speaking in Maltese, and how Arabic it was. And they're, of course, an island that is dealing with this massive refugee crisis.
Do you hope to go to more countries following this? Will you be staging the play elsewhere?
I do a lot of traveling for 9 Parts and have gone to a lot of different international places with it. And in each place it's a different conversation, and that's thrilling.
And you have quoted about the importance of the arts and what arts can do for social change, so I just wanted you to maybe elaborate on that again.
Sure. I mean, the whole name of our organization, Art to Action, is about this idea that the art doesn't stop when the curtain comes down or when the show's over, when the audience goes home. It at its best, that's the beginning of, it's a catalyst for a community to have a needed conversation and individuals to maybe decide what they might want to take action on and get involved in at the local level, if not also, reaching out to national and international connections. So this whole idea that as much as we love the artistic process, that's only part of it. That the community process is equally important, and maybe what I do it for, and what many of the artists who've come through this program are deeply invested in. not just what we get to say, but then what saying it catalyzes.
Well, thank you both so much. I feel like this is just the beginning of additional conversations that we need to have about the impact of the arts, which I feel really strongly about. So I'm really glad that I got the chance to speak with both of you about this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we
Appreciate it.
hope you'll come to the show, and all the viewers out there will come see 9 Parts of Desire in November.
Fantastic.
Great.
Thank you.